Here's what I need you to do. I need you to get a protractor and an old-fashioned paper map. Need to put the pointy end of the protractor on New Brunswick, New Jersey, then draw a 900 nautical mile radius around it. Because if you live within that circle, you need to come see Jay Black performing at the Stress Factory in New Brunswick, July 26th. That's a Wednesday. You got nothing going on a Wednesday. Come see me, Jay Black, performing. You can go to jblack.tv for tickets. That's jblack.tv. Or really, you're on your app. Just look in the app. There's a link in there. Just go to the link. Just click it. Come see me in New Brunswick. We're going to have such a blast. Hey guys, Jay Black here, just recording a short episode. In fact, I'm doing it on my phone, not on my big expensive setup, only because I still haven't unpacked from my trip to Vegas and Reno, and all my equipment is still in bags, and I haven't set it up yet, so it's just pure laziness. Anyway, because Philadelphia sports is doing so great, if you haven't been paying attention, the Phillies are in the World Series, and the Eagles are 7-0, I think. Is it 7-0? Might be 8-0. I don't know. You can tell how closely I follow all this. Angelo and Rhea, who are local sports radio hosts, and I say that like I live in Podunk, Iowa. They are the sports radio hosts of the sports radio station in the fourth biggest market in the world. So they're more than just radio hosts. They are very big deals. They are unable to join me like usual. So rather than not have an episode, I decided to do just like a little tiny mini episode for, somebody I had requested on Twitter, hey, if you ask a question, I'll answer it. And somebody said, why skip? Why not just skip? And the answer is because consistency is key. A podcast is like oatmeal. Consistency is key. So what we want to do is make sure we have an episode every week, even if our principal guests aren't here. So what I want to do is I want to run through the questions that I was asked on Twitter, and I'll answer them. So I put out, you can ask me anything, and let's go through some of the questions. How many of the estimated 2 trillion galaxies in the universe do you believe have life in them? And do you think any of those life forms have something more like TV and movies besides us? This comes from Andrew Kerr 75. That's Andrew Kerr 75 on Twitter. And this is actually a pretty good question, because if you think about it, storytelling really only comes if you perceive time the way we do. We've evolved to perceive time as stories. And I know I'm getting out there. This is very like Elon Musk did a whole lot of Adderall and is now going to give you a speech. But if you think about it, my son is reading Slaughterhouse-Five in his English class. And I loved that book. And one of the things about the Tralfamadorians in that book is that they did not perceive time as a linear story. They perceived it as all the moments of a person's life happening at once. And, I've talked about this a lot while drunk. But the idea is that if you look at the way the universe is constructed, if there is a group of people who are perceiving things as they occur, like if you think about like what happens during a car accident, the way we would describe a car accident would be, one person did this and the other person did this and they crashed. But that's not how it happened. 10 million things were also happening. There was a bird chirping that may or may not have been part of that. There was, honks from other cars. There was, somebody far off was singing along to the radio. Somebody may have been listening to Angelo and Rhea on their car. And it's really hard to get a sense of what really happened for us as humans unless we take all of that data and we put it into a story. So I don't know what it is exactly about us that evolved to understand stories, but my thinking is that there is almost 100% a chance that there is life out there. But I only give it like a 30-70 chance that they have filmed entertainment that we do, that we can understand. Because I don't know necessarily that they would perceive the universe
the same way we do. In fact, one of the descriptions of and again, I don't mean to be insensitive to neurodivergent people. I'm not making fun of them at all. But one of the ways I've heard autism described as an inability to see what other people find important. You know, that you see things that you find important that other people don't, which is why you sometimes come off as insensitive or unable to connect with people. You know, you might be watching two people kiss and missing completely the romance of it because you're, you know, paying attention to the painting behind the two people kissing, and what's important to you is not important to everybody else. So if we can think of, you know, the very narrow band of what we consider normal storytelling, or normal is a bad word, traditional storytelling, you know, I think it's very doubtful that aliens would have a very similar way of understanding the world as we do. All right, so that was Andrew Kerr. Let's take a look here. Ken Wilson, his Twitter handle is KCWilson781, says, what, if any, objects have been tossed at you from the audience and how did you react? And he also put in there, and don't say panties because we all know better. I don't think I've ever had anything thrown at me on stage that I can think of. You know, I got so jealous of the liberal comedian that had a Trump supporter throw a beer bottle at her. She went viral, like heavily viral 2 weeks ago. Got on the Jimmy Kimmel show. I've never had anybody throw anything that was able to lead me to some level of virality. The only thing I've ever had hurled at me, I think, is insults. I don't think I've ever had an item. I really thought hard about this. And you would think, you know, I performed in Northeast Philly for years. And it's shocking to me that nobody ever threw anything at me. I had one guy once, and this was in Delaware. I was performing at a Moose Lodge in Delaware. Don't be jealous of my career. If you work hard, you can one day perform at a Moose Lodge in Delaware. And I remember, this was Obama years. And I remember there was a guy in like full camo outfit, got mad at me, and he heckled me, and I hit him pretty hard and got a big laugh. And he left and walked back in with a shotgun. It might have been just a regular gun, like a rifle, but he had some sort of weapon with him. And he did it just for the shock value, because everybody's like, ooh. I did not believe I was going to get murdered. I just knew in my heart that my life was not going to end in a Moose Lodge in Delaware. So that was the closest, I guess, was somebody had a weapon that they threatened to put bullets in me on stage, but they never did. So thank you for the question. All right, we got a few more. Let's take a look here. Let's see. Since billionaires want to be comedians, or at least one specific one does, speaking of Elon Musk, and the Powerball is over $1 billion, what would you do with $1 billion? Well, I guess I would buy a blimp and send it over all the girls that dumped me, multiple blimps, just with an update of how much money in interest I earned, like across the side of it, like a Goodyear blimp. I'm only joking. I would not be that petty. I guess I would retire instantly. Probably not from comedy. I think I would retire from hustling, but I would still take gigs, and maybe it would raise my profile. I would be Jay Black, the billionaire comedian who doesn't need this, but does it anyway because he's emotionally broken and needs laughs from everyone. I didn't say who that was from. This was from the Karma DeLorean. KarmanDalorin. Karmandalorian. Yeah, there we go. So I think that's it. I think I would just retire from hustling, because part of the problem with what people don't understand about a comedy / movie / whatever it is career that I have, podcasting, Twitter, whatever, is that it's a constant hustle. It's constantly thinking of angles that might get me noticed. And the irony of it is, People think you're a comedian. You want people to notice you. It's not that you want to be noticed necessarily. The work to get people to pay attention to you is awful. It's just that you want to entertain. You want to be the center of attention for the very specific 45 minutes that you're in front of people. The rest of the time, if you could disappear, preferably in a magician's cloud of smoke, and just be normal, that would be wonderful. I mean, at least that's my dream. So, the hustling aspect of this, I would retire from, and I would just say to my management and agents, just get me whatever you get me. Doesn't matter. Don't want to travel that far. Well, actually, maybe I would travel all over because I'd have a private jet. But, that's what it would afford me. I wish I had something funnier to give. There's a lot of funny answers that you could give, but the real answer is retire from hustling and blimps with interest updates to the girls who rejected me. All right, I think there is one more question, and then we will peace out of this episode and be back to normal programming next week. Let's see. All right. We have, a couple more questions. Is James the favorite to win Survival this year? It comes from Michael Jenkinson. That is ML Jenkinson on Twitter. I have never and will never watch Twitter. I watch a lot of Twitter. Survivor. I think that I watched the first episode with Naked Richard. I think that was the one, the first season. And then I was like, yeah, I'm done. I don't think I ever need to see this again. I'm bad with reality shows, man. Like, very rarely will I watch a reality show. Like, I'll watch something like Welcome to Wrexham because it's not like a reality show where it's just sort of like manufactured drama. There's an inherent drama there. It's almost like documentary style. But the modern day reality show where it's like, hey, let's take a group of people, put them in a high stress situation and see what happens. It just does not appeal to me. I don't watch any Real Housewives. I don't watch The Amazing Race. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of The Amazing Race, even though so many people have told me that it's a wonderful version of that genre. I don't have any interest in it. So sorry. I'll say yes, James is the favorite. I did not know LeBron James was on Survivor this year, but of course he's a great athlete. I could see him doing very well. All right. DK Stout, that's SHS1978. I assume that's Shawnee High School, 1978. Which is his name is at Clarion, Clarion, Pilgrim, like what John Wayne would call you, says, didn't consider a week off. I'm enjoying the podcast, but I can't keep up with the list of recommendations. Right now, I'm on episode 3 of season 3 of Unforgotten. I think that's from 2 to 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it's, two things. One, I didn't take a week off, as mentioned up at the top, just because you need consistency. I'm trying to build the podcast because, as mentioned before in the billionaire question, I'm hustling, constantly hustling, so that I can make a living as an entertainer. It's terrible. You become an accountant, kids. That's my advice. So I couldn't take the week off. You'll notice there's only questions being asked here. There is no recommendations given, which should give you another week to catch up. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast, is that like we're only delving into a very small section of the TV that's available. I was reading Quentin Tarantino's new book, Cinema Speculation, and it was talking about the explosion of different types of movies in the late 60s and early 70s. After, basically 50 years of Hollywood controlling everything, there was new Hollywood, which then just became Hollywood. And the idea that, that the audiences would accept a mature and different way of doing things, which did not seem possible in the studio era, had now opened the door. And there was all these kinds of movies that Quentin Tarantino grew up in the late 60s and early 70s. And I was thinking about it, that's 50 years after the start of like real movies in 1900. Things start to change. Well, 55, 60 years, right? Television really gets started in 1950. 50 to 60 years later, you get The Sopranos, and then all of the other things in the new golden age. And I wonder, and again, this is just one of those patterns that you notice when you're thinking about this kind of stuff. Probably isn't true, but you wonder if it does take about 50 to 60 years for a medium to mature at which point the early tropes of the medium can change and shift, and that's when you get the explosion of new ideas. You need a couple of generations of people that lived in the medium to absorb it, to love it, and then change it with all the ideas that they've accrued and sort of blow it up. Because, you get tropes really quickly. Like, I'm a big YouTube fan, and, think about how many people open their YouTube videos with, "Hey guys, what's up? What's up, guys? It's me," whoever. Tropes ossify very quickly on things. And I think that you get the initial tropes. You say, okay, this is what works. In the 50s, it's like, hey, a sitcom is a dad that works a nondescript white upper middle class job, comes home with a hat, smokes a pipe, mom's in pearls and high heels in the kitchen, and the kids are getting up to, acceptable trouble. And you go, okay, that's a sitcom. And for 50 years, that's a sitcom. And, you get variations on it, but you don't get like a really genre exploding sitcoms. And then, 50 years in, you get, like something like The Simpsons, which comes early, but it takes all the tropes of the sitcom and kind of turns them on their head. And now, there's like shows like We Have to Kill Kevin, which is a complete rethinking of a traditional sitcom. It blows up the idea of a traditional sitcom. We don't want to mention like Louis C.K. anymore, but like, just forgetting all the terrible things he did, think about the difference between what his show was like and what, Seinfeld's show was like when he had a chance to make a show. To take an example that's less gross, think about what Larry David did in his pseudo documentary versus, what he did with Seinfeld. So it's kind of an interesting thing about the explosion and the proliferation of television that has happened thanks to 50 years of living in it. So I'm wondering if that'll happen with YouTube or TikTok or really online video as it evolves. The early ossification of tropes will get blown up. But yes, this is just a long way of saying a lot of choices, a lot of things to watch, to keep up with. We can't cover them all, and I don't expect you to watch them all. All right. And finally, we have my comedian buddy, let's see, Steve Bost, and his Twitter handle is Stephen Bost, BOST1 on Twitter. I urge you to follow all the people that ask me questions, because guess what? They're American heroes. Because I ask for questions. These are the only people that answer them. They are the greatest generation. Okay, so Stephen asks, why are professional sports such a dumb waste of time? I'll take my answer off the air if need be. Okay, well, he's making a little funny, which I get. I'm not the hugest sports fan, but I will say this. There are two levels on which to appreciate sport. The first, I think that Stephen or your average non-sports watcher won't appreciate, and the second, that he might. And the first appreciation of sports is the athleticism of it. You love to watch people who are physically trained do a very difficult thing. It is very hard to hit a baseball. It is very hard to throw a perfect spiral 30 yards and for someone else to catch it. These are hard things to do. Now, you might say, well, it's an arbitrary hard things to do. And what's the difference between that and plate spinning? You're right. It is also very hard to spin plates, but there isn't groups of plate spinners. And every time a new sport has tried to arise, it's weird what catches on and what doesn't. Very few people really cared during the pandemic when cornhole temporarily became all of ESPN's programming. Also a very hard thing to do. It's pandemic safe, but no one gave a crap. No one watched. No one cared. So it is an arbitrary, exaltation. I forgot. My brain isn't working. I just woke up. I have jet lag. I'll think of the word later. Tune in next week when I think of the word I was trying to say just there. But yes, taking a sport and arbitrarily giving it rise maybe does not appeal to people that haven't played the sport, which I totally understand. The second reason to appreciate sports, and Stephen, this might be what gets you going, and it's also really the thing that gets me going, is there are storylines that develop. As I said in the very first questions, human beings understand the world via storylines. It's just the way our brains are designed. So when we look at a football season, we don't just look at it as a collection of things that happened and statistics. We look at it as a growing storyline. And sports coverage creates storylines around it. That's how they frame the season. Which coaches are in trouble? Which players are on the rise? How is it that Tom Brady is doing so poorly in Tampa Bay? Is it because he went to the wedding of Robert Kraft? Do the people on his team hate him? Can we see some of this in the field? On the field? In the field would have been weird. The Eagles are doing really well. What is it that, what chemistry has been added or taken away from the Eagles that make them do so well? I'm reading about, the quarterback from the Jets moving to Seattle and doing great, where Russell Wilson has gone from Seattle not doing so great. All of these sort of storylines, which they frame it, I think you can find drama and I think you can find joy in those storylines. Maybe not watching every single game, but just give this a try during a season. And it doesn't have to be like the stuff everybody else watches. I mean, you can do this with English football, especially if you subscribe to Peacock. You can watch basically all of the Premiership games. They have a set of goal highlights, which is just fantastic, that you can watch at the end of every week. It's like the best plays in soccer. But you can watch it and also get a sense of the storylines. And you might not care, but you might find yourself kind of like checking the tables and see how people are doing and go, yeah, this is kind of interesting. The sports themselves might be arbitrary, but there is drama there because human beings can't help but shape the world that they live in into stories. And on that note, I'm going to end the episode and say next week, Rhea and Angelo will be back and we'll have our regular TV discussion. But I kind of like doing this format where I'm answering questions. Is that because I'm a malignant narcissist that doesn't care that he's sitting in the dark by himself answering questions from relative strangers on the internet to an audience that may or may not be listening, but it's okay because he can hear his own voice echoing off the walls? Well, that's part of it, yeah. But it's also that I like a little bit of change up from time to time. This won't be a regular thing. It'll only happen when we, circumstances force us to do so. So please tune in next week for regular stuff. And hey, if you enjoyed this, go back, listen to the other episodes. I promise you'll get some information and some entertainment. And if you wouldn't mind, go tell people about the show. Each of you right now, open your windows and shout like you were Grandpa Joe in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, in a song version if you can, that this is the golden ticket to the golden age of television. Just thought of that. Not great. Going to workshop it. Have a good week, everybody.